Welcome all. So today we are going to discuss the major difference between the data warehouse, data lake, and lakehouse, formerly known as Delta Lake. So these three are the most confusing things for any kind of budding data engineers like freshers or even with 1 or 2 years of experience, guys. They are majorly caught confusion between these three words. Regularly we are using in day-to-day life. Like what is meant by data warehouse, data lake, and the delta lake, nothing but lakehouse architecture. Why these three things has been evolved. So in this video, we are going to majorly focus on these concepts. What is the benefits of data warehouse, drawbacks of data warehouse, data lake, benefits and their drawbacks, the evolution of lakehouse architecture as well. So let's get started. So we all know that data warehouse Data warehouse is nothing but a big giant database, usually store the data properly for 10 to 15 years of data in the form of tables. Okay. So data warehouse used to store the large amount of data in the form of tables. Whenever I'm saying the tables means it's definitely a structured data type. Okay. Used to store only structured data types. Okay, means the semi-structured data or unstructured data like JSON files or the videos or any kind of binary files are unable to store with the help of the data warehouse. The purpose of data warehouse is used to store the large amount of data in the form of tables. And whenever I'm saying tables means it's definitely a structured data type. Okay. And then on top of the data warehouse, so many Power BI people going to use the data. And then data warehouse have the most one of the best feature is nothing but ACID properties. Having the ACID properties. This is the hot for any kind of relation database management system. Okay, having the ACID properties on that, and most of them used by the Power BI people only to generate the reports, but used for BI services, but it does not have the ML support. Okay, so these are the couple of disadvantages and advantages of the data warehouse. This is the old school way. I mean, this is the initial one where the people has been evolved into data generation. They are using to store in the data in the form of tables. Okay. So in the next generation, data has been evolved vastly. So every time you cannot say, okay, I can only store the structured data. So we cannot escape like that one in the recent forms, in the recent generation. Data can be come from any kind of forms. It may come from the web activities, or it may be from the IoT devices, or it may be due to some analog data. Analog data are digital data. Okay. So whenever we are getting the data from some kind of IoT devices, means definitely it is a JSON format. We can expect that one. JSON format, whenever we are saying it's a JSON format, means it's a semi-structured one. And whenever we are saying analog and digital data means it's definitely unstructured data. Okay. Data has been evolved and its types has also been evolved vastly. And you cannot say I can only store the structured data. So to overcome the issue of the data warehouse, data lake came into the picture. It is used to store the data in the form of files. Okay. This is important. Data warehouse used to store the data in the form of tables. Data lake used to store the data in the form of files. And have the ability to store structured, semi-structured, unstructured data. Why? Because we are storing data as a files, so that there is no objection like you have to only store the structured files like CSVs or any kind of Excel files like that one. So we don't have any that kind of objections. You can store data as in the form of files, means you can have the semi-structured and unstructured data as well. So this is going a while. I mean, whenever we are storing the data as a files, and ML people or AI people, artificial, whoever working on artificial intelligence or ML, they can easily utilize that one, right? That's what I also mentioned in the PPT, used by the data science and the machine learning model, developing the machine learning model. Okay. Why? Because it is in the form of files, and you can use in a Python or any kind of language, you can do the IO operations on top of the file. So this is going well for a couple of times. Okay. Everyone is good looking with the data lake, and they are saying, okay, it is storing, it have the structured data, and it is storing the semi-structured and unstructured data. Okay, let me tell you the couple of examples of data lake. Whenever it comes to the cloud, we have Amazon S3 and Azure storage account are the couple of examples for the data lake. And data warehouse, and you can have the relation data warehouse as one of the best example for the data warehouses. Okay. Data lakes, let's say data lakes examples. Now this is good. Everyone is okay with the advantages of the data lake, and that they are doing well. But after some point of time, what happened means, so data lake is also called as a modern data warehouse. Okay, another form of the data lake. It is a modern data warehouse. So these data warehouse and data lake people got a debate between them. Means they are saying, my data warehouse has the ACID properties, and you data lake does not have that properties. And this data lake people said, I can store the structured, semi-structured, unstructured data, but you cannot store those things. And this is your disadvantage. This is my disadvantage. The fighting has been going on between them. In between them, Databricks come with one paper by saying, okay, don't worry, we are going to build a Lakehouse architecture, which have the warehouse properties and data lake properties. Okay. So before going there, let me see the disadvantage of data lake, and then we will move on to the Lakehouse architecture. Okay. So what is the disadvantage? What are the disadvantages here? Data lake is not a database, right? Whenever we are saying it is not a database, means it does not have the ACID properties. Okay. So you are saying ACID properties and all. So what is the advantage of ACID properties? I mean, why the ACID properties are important? The major advantage of ACID properties are nothing but, so if we look at that, let's imagine one of the example. Generally, ACID properties gives us the quality of data and prevent any kind of writing inconsistent data, right? So in the same fashion, let me tell you this one. ACID properties gives us the quality of data and prevent any inconsistent data. Inconsistent or corrected data. So ACID properties are known as atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So why these are important? Whenever it comes to the database, or why it is important means, imagine we had a transaction. Okay, let's just say we are loading the data of the sales data to the database using either any kind of either you can use the ADF copy data activity or whatever There are a couple of ETL tools are there, right? Whatever the ETL tool you may use, you just simply loading the data from so and so source to the destination as a table. Imagine as of now, imagine like that one. So during that process, if it fails, okay, due to this process, if it fails means we cannot get the proper data. So that one, these kind of ACID properties ensures that no partial or incorrect data is going to dump into the data warehouse in the middle of the, even though the failure has been happened. That is what the Atomicity says, right? A for Atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. So based on this disadvantage, they are majorly focusing. Data warehouse people are majorly showing the finger to the data lake people. And the basic, I mean, this is their main advantage. They are saying this is the main advantages. Disadvantages, sorry. So what is Atomicity says that, for instance, generally what Atomicity says is going to ensure either all operations in a transaction are nothing but let's imagine loading data from source to sink, okay, for instance, ensures the either all the operations in a transaction are completed or not completed. It ensures either all operations in a transaction are completed or not. Okay, that means whenever we are talking to the data warehouse in terms, okay, either data loaded is successfully or it has to be rolled back, trying to bring the original state if any kind of failure occurs. Either data loaded successful or it's rolled back to original state if any failure occurs. Okay, so these kind of properties are not present in the data lake. Why? Because we are storing as a files. Okay, so not only that, there are a couple of disadvantages or also there schema enforcement. Schema enforcement or nothing but let's say no schema enforcement. Yeah, no schema enforcement. No schema enforcement is nothing but suppose you have a file, consider a CSV with 5 columns. Next day, from the source, we got the additional column. Okay, so in the destination, we have 5 columns. Source, we have 6 columns. So we cannot merge the data at that time. So this is called as a no schema enforcement. Okay, that can be overcome with the help of delta lakes. Okay, that's the secondary thing. Let's think about the drawbacks of it. Okay, and there are a lot of disadvantages. Let's stick to these 2 things. Okay, these are the 2 major things we can follow up, and also data duplication. Data duplication is nothing but let's say need to duplicate let's say need to duplicate, clean, and aggregate the data. That is nothing but data duplication. So as I mentioned before, data lake in other terms called as a modern data warehouse. So in a modern data warehouse, let's take a ADF. So we are going to design three layers, right? Raw and silver and gold. Okay. So we'll take the data from raw to silver, and in the silver, we are going to paste the data. And after data doing all kind of validations and cleaning, again, we are storing in the gold data. So there is some sort of data duplication is going to be happening, whereas that is not possible in the data warehouse. In the data warehouse, you mostly do on one table only. Entire data will going to do on either a dimension or fact table, whatever. But here in the data lake, for the dimension file, you need to keep it separate in silver, and again in the gold, you have to keep it in a separate silver. Some sort of data duplication is going to be happen. So to solve all these kind of problems, I mean, disadvantage of data warehouse. What are the disadvantage of data warehouse? It cannot store the, I mean, what I can say, semi-structured or structured data. Okay, but having the ACID properties. Data lake, it can store the semi-structured, structured, and unstructured data as a files, but doesn't have the any kind of ACID properties and no schema enforcement on that. So to overcome all this, Lakehouse has been came into the picture. Lakehouse architecture. Lakehouse is nothing but data lake plus data warehouse. Okay. So who proposed this Lakehouse architecture? This guy, Databricks. Okay. The main intention behind it just to maintain a single system that manage both using data lake and data warehouse. Okay. How it can store means. So data, this is the Lakehouse architecture. Okay. So Databricks proposes Lakehouse as one of the single system to maintain to solve the problems of Delta Lake and data warehouse. So they are going to introduce one metadata and governance layer. Metadata and governance layer are nothing but whenever you are storing the data as a delta table, I will going to tell you what is meant by delta table on them. So whenever we are storing the data as form of delta tables, additionally, some sort of JSON files are going to be generated in the backend. Those JSON files are going to store our metadata. This is the reason why we can have the ACID properties. So I'm maintaining the metadata transaction. Transactions is nothing but an ACID property so that I can roll it back whenever the failure happen. Okay, these kind of things are going to be supported by the Lakehouse architecture. Also, you can store it as a files in the, I mean, you can store the data as a files in the Lakehouse architecture. Okay. So that is right. So that is the how the Lakehouse architecture is came into the picture. So to work with the Lakehouse architecture, I mean to work with the Lakehouse architecture is nothing but uh, to work with this transaction layer. Transaction layer is under meta and governance layer. To work with the transaction layer, we need to use the Delta Lake. Using the Delta Lake, we can implement the Lakehouse architecture. Remember one thing, Delta Lake is not a storage system. It's just a storage framework, or some people call as a storage layer. Okay, let's see the definitions. Delta Lake. It is nothing but open source storage layer that brings data reliability. Okay. data in the lakes. Lakes are nothing but data lake. Okay. Don't confuse. Delta Lake is come in the Lakehouse architecture. Data lake are nothing but Azure storage account or AWS system. So that it brings transaction capabilities. To the data lakes. Okay. And we are going to run on top of our existing data lake. Okay. So that, so if you look at these 3 points, sir, you said it is the combination of data warehouse and data lake. We are not creating any kind of tables now. How we can say it is a data warehouse? What I am saying, Delta Lake, I mean, what I am keep on saying, we are going to use the files in the data lake. On top of the files, we are going to create the tables. Those are nothing but the delta tables. Run on top of the existing data lake and will create tables in order to bring the ACID properties. Nothing but a delta table. So whatever the tables you created in the database, that is called as a delta table. Okay, this carry on the ACID properties. Nothing but, let's suppose, we can see practically that one also. Let's imagine you are reading a file in a data warehouse. I mean, sorry, using a database, PySpark, you are reading a file df is equal to a spark.read. So on so. And you created a temporary view on top of the data frame. But whenever you try to write the update statement, you cannot write it. It is saying it is not a table or delta table. If you do the filter, let's say in the second scenario, you have done some sort of filtering on top of the data and you return the filtered data to the temporary location. Okay, some sort of temporary location or overwritten to the same location. Let's imagine. In the next day, the business people came with, okay, no, I don't want to filter data, I want all the data. At that time, we cannot roll it back. Why? Because so far we are dealing with the files, does not have the ACID properties. With the help of delta table, we can roll it back. That's called as a time traveling version. Okay. So this is the example of the delta lake, difference between data warehouse, data lake, and why the delta lake came into the picture. Okay. What is the advantage of delta lake over the data lake and data warehouse? So in the next video, we are going to see the practical implementation of disadvantage of the data lake. Okay. Next video, we are going to implement the practical implementation of the different disadvantage of the data lake. Okay. And we are going to create a delta tables. That's fine.